Well, Paul Finebaum recently said something about Mississippi State football that, if you've been following the SEC, especially Mississippi State, it won't come as a huge shock. But it's not just what he said, it's how he said it that's got people talking. It was blunt, maybe even brutal, and it's definitely making the rounds. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Go to FanDuel.com. I'm Jaron, Spor, a national college football writer at Athlon Sports. That's Landon, McBride. We have an exciting show for you today, so sit back, grab your favorite beverage. Hopefully, if you're driving to work, listening to this first thing, it's not an alcoholic beverage. But if you're listening,
May one.
Hey, I guess it depends how your Monday went. Don't drive though. Do it at home. But no, if you're at home, grab your favorite beverage. Maybe you're about to watch the NBA games, but we got a lot to talk about today. Paul Finebaum made that interesting quote about Mississippi State, and also Kentucky was thrown into that quote, so we'll break that down. We also have some football portal news, and of course, in this transfer portal era, things can change so fast, so we'll see if it's actually still accurate when this podcast comes out. And then the last thing we'll talk about, we're going to preview the baseball game tonight against the Texas A&M Aggies. But first, let's get into what Paul Finebaum said. This was last week on his show, the Paul Finebaum Show. He was actually discussing Tennessee's upcoming schedule. And what he was talking about when discussing that was he just didn't see, even with the changes with Nico leaving, he just didn't see a lot of losses on their schedule. It's a pretty easy schedule. And he was going through the programs, and then he got to Mississippi State. And he said, at Mississippi State, he said that doesn't take a lot of imagination, saying that that should be a win. Then he said, at Kentucky. And then he said, I mean, those two are arguably the two worst programs in the SEC. So a very blunt statement by the mouth of the South, and it's hard to argue it, though.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, listening to him sometimes may make you want to grab your favorite adult beverage.
Right.
No, it doesn't. And it's really hard to argue with how things have gone over the last couple of years.
Right.
But you just never want to hear it. Even though you kind of like, you know, it's kind of true, but I do think there's some light at the end of the tunnel, but it has been dark and it's hard to argue with right now. It is nice that he didn't just say Mississippi State is the worst. He threw someone else down there with us, but you know.
And it's a team that we both have said we think is worse than Mississippi State, despite the 2-10 season last year. I wrote an article about this, and so I will say, if you read it, I'm not in the journalism world where I write opinion. This is all just based off of what was said, and then so if you read it and you're like, why didn't you stick up for us? That's not what my job is. My job is just to write what he said and then kind of give some stuff that back up basically what he said, which, you know, it's hard to argue because Mississippi State went 2-10, obviously, last year in the first year under Jeff Lebby. They had one win over an FBS opponent. That was against UMass, and that was near the end of the year. The other win was against an FCS opponent. So it's hard to argue it, but I will say this. The thing that he never clarified in that, because, again, he was talking about Tennessee's schedule, so he wasn't diving into Mississippi State, but he never clarified the part where it's like, is he talking about based off of just last season? Is he talking about just as a whole? Is he talking about just on the field? It came across as just on the field, but is he talking about on the field? Is he talking about the NIL situation off the field? We've already talked about what he said about a couple of weeks ago about when he questioned if they're committed to football. So is it all that in a whole? Like, this is just one of the worst programs in the SEC because of everything, or is it just on the field?
I mean, based off of his past comments, I would say it's based off of everything, just knowing things he has said in the past. But I think in this particular instance, he is just referring to on-field play.
Yeah.
But I think if pressed, he would go on to say, yeah, pretty much because of everything. But I do think that was mainly because of play. And again, you can't argue with that. You go 2-10, you get called the worst, and there's very few teams you can argue that you were better than.
Yeah, and this is the only thing I will say kind of push back on it is I am not someone that overreacts after one season. And Mississippi State has been a middle of the road, maybe slightly below average SEC program for several years now. Mike Leach had the thing going pretty well, and then obviously he tragically passed away. And Zach Arnett still had a winning season, so it wasn't like the wheels fell off. I mean, it wasn't great, obviously, because I think Leach was 9-3 the year he passed away, and then they or maybe he was 8-4, and then they won the bowl game, went 9-4 after he passed away. But so it wasn't like the wheels fell off when Arnett took over. Things weren't great, but they still weren't the worst program. Yeah. I'm still of the mindset that unless Vanderbilt does it again, they should be the worst program.
Yeah, I mean, if you go over, more than like the last 2 years, then Vanderbilt will always be the worst program in the SEC, and it's not even close. Outside of just a couple blips here and there, they're not good. Right. Whereas Mississippi State is very middle of the pack, maybe just below the middle of the pack, outside of a few years at the very bottom, a couple years where they were closer to the top. So, which averages back out to the middle of the pack.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if you're referring to over the last 3-4 years, then yes, you can make the argument that Mississippi State is at the bottom. But if you're going longer term, I mean, it's Vandy.
Yeah, and I said Arnett went 7-6. He actually went 5-7. I had that kind of flipped. But still, I mean, well, that's not a winning season and one that you've kind of grown accustomed to, especially when Leach had the thing going the right way. It's not a season where you're like, that's the worst program in the conference. And so if Levy follows that up, which very possible, we've talked about this, that it's hard to find that fourth win on the schedule. If he follows it up with a 3-9 season, then you don't have an argument really, because now that's multiple seasons in a row of being bad. So you got to go out and figure out a way to get that 4, 5, 5th win and not finish dead last in the SEC like you did last year. So you can kind of change that narrative that this was a fluke season last year, and Levy kind of has the things rolling for the future.
Yeah, you have to find that 4th win. Hopefully the 5th one, because I mean, even
right.
Oh gosh, I was about to do math. 4-8 is not. I mean, that's still bad. That's still looking real bad. 2-10, 4-8. Yeah, you improved 2 games, but that's not a good 2 game.
Right.
So you want to hit that 5-win mark, but I don't know where you find it. And if you're at the bottom, not only are you now in that conversation for worst program, and it becomes tough to argue, it becomes where do you go from here with in sense of football? Like you start having to overhaul coaches, which then may restart the process of going with like a 2 or 3 win season, because you're going to have to overhaul the whole team, get that guys in that want to run that system, that offense, that defense. So you're in a rough spot if you don't start to turn things around now.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say they only have had, I believe, 5 losing seasons since 2010. So it's not like this is a program that's in the cellar very often. And most of those were not back-to-back, if I remember correctly. Like it was kind of just like you had this down year. They obviously had the 2 back-to-back in 2019 and 2020. But other than that, they were just kind of sporadic is when they happen. And so history tells you that they're going to bounce back, and if they have a losing season, this would be the last of it, and then the next year they would get back to their winning ways. So I can't put them down at the bottom right now just off of the one season. And I will say, even though I think Mississippi State's a better program than Kentucky, I can't put Kentucky at the bottom because they've been really good lately, and then they just had a down season, and so I can't be a hypocrite and say they're at the bottom now. Now, granted, they've had a coach that's been there a long time, so them being at the bottom now, taking those steps back, looks way worse than a first-year coach doing that. But and I want to talk about the off-the-field stuff as a program, because we talked about this work that Selman's doing, earned him a contract extension. He's getting the indoor practice facility. So it looks like off the field, they finally have their ducks in a row. And so so if Finebaum is talking about the program as a whole and not just on the field results, it looks like the off the field stuff is getting worked out.
Yeah, it does. And that's the first step, but you have to, those off the field things have to translate to being on the field, or they really don't matter. And again, it comes down to if Levy is what everyone thought he was in the last hiring cycle, If he
Right.
has this offensive mind who can be a very good head coach, then you're in a very good position. And this is just a blip. This is program building, which it happens everywhere at some point. Everyone had to build up at some point. And if that's all this is, these 2 years, then great. And in a couple of years, you're going to be in the mix. It's worth it. But if you miss on the hire, then those off the field things are just really nice buildings that aren't really amounting to much.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, coming up next is Mississippi State on the verge of adding someone in the transfer portal. We'll talk about that. Well, the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So if you watch Game 7 between the Thunder and the Nuggets, the Thunder went on a massive run at the end of the second quarter. If you're like, man, I want to put some money that they're going to continue that run, you would have been able to do that with FanDuel. Or if you were like, I want to put some money that Denver will make a run, you could put money on that. If you did the Denver, you would have lost some money because the Oklahoma City ended up blowing that one open. But you could also, we talked about this earlier, if your first $5 bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. So you don't want to miss out to that. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, listen up. It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And like I just said, if it wins $200 in bonus bets, how could you not take advantage of that, especially with the NBA playoffs on right now? It could be an easy bet, too. It could be a $5 that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to score 1 point, and there you go, $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so we have to get into some transfer portal news for football. We talked about last week that they were probably done, but if there was a cornerback that kind of interested them, then something could happen. Well, that's kind of is what happened. Elijah Brown, who is kind of a weird situation. So he's a JUCO player that transferred to Arizona in the spring, the winter transfer portal cycle, but then re-entered the transfer portal. And he visited Mississippi State last week. Now, he's from California. He said it was kind of a different vibe in town, which obviously Mississippi and California are pretty different. But he said he loved the hospitality. Yeah, just a little bit. But he said he loved the hospitality he was shown by everyone. Now, he's going to be a sophomore, so he's got 3 years of eligibility. He played in 10 games last year, made 38 tackles, averaged 3.8 tackles per game, forced a fumble and recovered a fumble, and grabbed 5 interceptions. So he had a really solid season. Now, I want to preface this real quick. If y'all know about when our episodes come out, they always come out at 6 o'clock Central Time in the morning. With the transfer portal, it is very possible that by this time this episode comes out, he could have committed committed at Mississippi State, could have committed elsewhere because Colorado State's another one in the running. And so just beware that this could be an old segment by the time it comes out. But as of right now, he has not committed.
Still in the portal.
He is still in the portal. But it's just the transfer portal is so weird that guys are like, I'm not setting a date. I still want to think about it. And then 2 seconds later, they commit somewhere. So just beware. But just kind of talk about the addition.
I mean, he'd be the kind of fit we were talking about. A corner that can make a little bit of an impact now, but might be kind of a depth piece. Because, I mean, he's a sophomore, going to be sophomore.
Yeah, he's a sophomore,
so he'll be younger guy, might not crack, be in the rotation, might not start away. He has good size. I mean, 6'2", about 200 pounds. So that's pretty good size for a corner. You mentioned all those interceptions. I mean, that's what you're looking for. Right. So, I mean, I think he'd be a great add. He's the exact type of player that I thought they would kind of go after, and they found one. So it's kind of just a waiting game at this point, and you never know how long you're going to have to wait in these situations.
Right, yeah, you never know. It could pop any second. Like I said, I just said that by the time this thing goes online, he could have already committed. But he's got great size, too. He's 6'2", about 180. You'd like to get him a little more get his weight up a little bit. But
I mean, what I saw had him at 195. So I mean,
so there you go. So maybe he has. And Arizona doesn't have it listed at all, which obviously he came in the winter portal, so they probably haven't really done some of the weight stuff by the time he entered the portal again. But no, 195 would be a really good size. And if you could get him to the 200, which again, he was at a community college, so I don't expect him to have this great, perfect size right now, because it's just a different kind of strength and conditioning program. It just is. And he was a true freshman last year. So those guys are going to have to develop physically, but 6'2" is really good size. And he playmaker, 5 interceptions, forced a fumble. This is a guy that, like you said, that we talked about, would be a perfect player because he's got multiple years of eligibility. You can come in, and if he has to get thrown in, he's proven he's a playmaker and he can do some stuff. If he doesn't have to get thrown in right away, he's a guy that you can develop, and he's got, like I said, 3 years of eligibility, and he's got his redshirt year. So really, he's got 4 years to play 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best case scenario if you get him in is you let him play in those first 4 games, you see what he's got, and you plan on redshirting him. But if he forces his way onto the field, great. If not, you have some game tape. You can show him what he needs to work on, and you put him through that weight program and get him and just have him a year in the system and a year in the program. And then all of a sudden you have a guy who you feel probably pretty confident that could start for you in a year. And I mean, that's what I would look for most times in a transfer portal. Is you obviously want the high profile guy who jumps in, but that requires a whole NIL situation that's a whole other conversation. And this is the guy who has some talent, has some size, maybe was just underlooked coming out of high school, has made some plays. Get him in here and see what he's made of.
Well, and because there's not many corners that enter that are elite corners, everyone's going after him. Everyone is going after him. And so getting a guy that has a lot of upside, has multiple years, and you mentioned maybe he gets on the field and plays well. Maybe it's special teams he plays well, and that's his role next year. And because if he's a playmaker, like I said, forced a fumble, recovered a fumble, 5 interceptions. If he's a playmaker, maybe he's a playmaker on special teams. Maybe it's not a playmaker as a starting corner or a rotational corner. Maybe it is like I said, the special teams. Maybe they find a role for him to play safety or kind of that hybrid position with his size. Yeah. So maybe it's something like that. You never know what kind of role he could have, but he's a guy that, again, it's the JUCO level, so you have to kind of take that into account with his stats. But his stats show he probably could play at this level. Now I'd be interested to see what his speed is like and things like that. But it looks like it's a battle between you and Colorado State, and Colorado State's obviously a little closer to home in terms of he's from California, but it's not like it's in California. And who knows if that's something that's important to him. Some guys it is and some guys it isn't. But this is a battle that really you should be able to win.
Yeah, unless he just wants to stay as close to home as possible.
Right.
This should be over very quickly in terms of what you can offer versus Colorado State. And with all these turnovers, especially with recovering fumbles, everyone always talks about how it's, to an extent, it is luck to recover those. Yeah. But when you're always in the right place, being in the right place at the right time is a skill.
Yeah.
And if he has, at some point, it shifts from being luck to a skill. Like if someone just recovers like 4 in a row and never does it again, no, it's probably luck. But you see players who are just always in the right place at the right time to where it seems like they're just the luckiest player ever. And it's like, no, that's preparation.
Yeah. Right.
And if he's that kind of player, even if he is a little bit slower than you would like, or maybe his weight never gets up to what you would prefer, if he's a smart player, you can always find roles for guys who are smart with adequate athleticism.
Yeah, and I will say he was a 3-star coming out of high school, and he ended up going the JUCO route. This isn't always the case, but a lot of times if a guy is at least rated and goes the JUCO route, it might be something grades related.
Yes.
So that I will say that. So if he does go to Colorado State, maybe whatever he's trying to do, he can't get into Mississippi State as easy as he could to Colorado. Who knows what all goes into it. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So I don't want to say like, oh, if he goes to Colorado State, it's a terrible look for Mississippi State. They can't beat Colorado State. You don't know what all goes into it. It could be a lot of things. But this is the ideal type of player that you are looking for. Now I'm curious to kind of see or kind of hear if anything comes out. Why did he leave Arizona? Because I haven't seen anything. I did some quick searches on it. Didn't really see anything. Why did he leave Arizona? Was he got to that level and it just was not cut out for it? Was it, a coach left that he thought was going to be there? Was it, he was lied to? You never know, like what it was that happened. Maybe he's just so far down the depth chart, he's just not going to make it. So you never know what it was. And also, I know a lot of teams did those cuts because they were thinking they were going to have to lose all those players. And so was he one of those cuts?
Might have been.
That's the thing. We don't know. So it'll be interesting to see. But it would be the perfect get if that's perfect kind of idea of player that we thought they could get at the end. So we'll see what happens. But all right, coming up next, we got to preview the Mississippi State Texas A&M SEC tournament game. Don't go anywhere. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We don't have a whole lot of minutes left, so we got to get into it quick. Landon, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, kind of what are you looking for?
Really, it starts with pitching, and Ryan McPherson is who's getting on the mound. He's been pitching a lot of relief lately.
Yeah.
But he's been pitching very well. So are they going to try to get a lot of innings out of him, or are they kind of hoping one time through the lineup, 3 to 4 innings, and then just let the bullpen ride? Because you threw a lot of pitchers this last weekend, but not many of them pitched too deep into games. And on that note, we figured it out. We know Evan didn't get the win.
Yes.
Because he didn't go enough innings, which I thought that was the case. But with shortened games, I wasn't sure if the number of innings you had to pitch changed.
Dropped, yeah.
But that's really what I'm looking at. And if the bats can stay hot.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision going with Ryan because he's pitched 5 innings since April 27th, 5.1 innings since April 22nd, because he only pitched 0.1 innings in that April 27th game. So he hasn't pitched a lot. The last 3 games, he's allowed no hits at all. His last outing, his last outing that he allowed some runs and some hits was at Auburn. It wasn't good. Like I said, he only got 1 out in that game. He was pulled. The game before that, he really wasn't good. That was the game against Ole Miss when really all of the relievers collapsed down the stretch. And then the game before that, he wasn't good against Florida. So it's kind of interesting to see what they're going with, but they're just kind of banking on the struggling A&M team that's kind of played here at the end. And I get not pitching Pico or not pitching Evan or doing something like that because you probably want to save Pico, who again, Pico is another one, and Evan too. They didn't have to pitch a whole lot of innings this weekend, so they probably could go for this game. But I understand not going with them. So I'm curious to see if they go if Mississippi State's able to win and knock off Texas A&M. Do they go Pico next game? Do they go Evan next game? What do they end up deciding on that? But first, you got to get through this one, and we talked about it on yesterday's episode. They've really struggled here down the stretch. Obviously, got swept by Missouri, lost 2 out of 3 against Georgia. So they've lost 5 of their last 6 games in conference. But the games right before that was a 2-1 series win over LSU. So it all depends on which team shows up. But they're struggling down the stretch, so you got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, they're struggling, and like we mentioned, McPherson's been hot his last 3 or 4 outings, even though they didn't last too long. So I think you're hoping he can give you 2, 3, maybe into the 4th inning, and then just roll your bullpen out. Guys just going 2 innings, keep everyone fresh, and then you get your workhorses in the next couple games. You never want to coach for tomorrow, but I think this is a little bit of coaching for tomorrow. I think you're hoping your bats carry you to a win in this one.
Yeah, and I will say, someone posted the other day, like, oh, well, they're going to struggle. They'll probably even lose to posted on a comment on ours. They're going to lose to Texas A&M because they struggle in the SEC tournament recently. They really haven't struggled. I mean, last year they beat Ole Miss in the first game. They beat number 4 A&M, who played for the championship game last year. Now, they lost to Vanderbilt, then they lost to number 1 Tennessee, but they lost both of those games by 1 runs. It's not like they just are terrible and they're getting bounced. Like, that's just not reality. They've actually been a pretty good SEC tournament team. At least last year they were. They've obviously had their struggles outside of that. But, hey, y'all tell me that it was all Lamonis. So Lamonis is gone. So,
and you know what happened last year has no bearing on this team.
Right.
So,
right.
All right, gut feeling.
Although you hope
What's
it does
that?
because they beat a really good A&M team last year.
So, you calling a win?
Yeah, I think they beat A&M. I really do. Because I feel like A&M is struggling so much right now that I just feel they're the better. Mississippi State's the better team. And Mississippi State, you couldn't have asked for two complete opposite teams. Mississippi State's rolling right now, and we posted a short yesterday where we talked about it on Monday's podcast to temper the expectations, the opponents, and all that. Still, they're rolling. They're playing really good, and A&M's struggling mightily. You have to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think they win. I think it'll probably be a little bit closer for about half the game than everybody's comfortable with, but I think bats get hot and pull away a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over on Athlon Sports. That's Landon. Follow us, Locked On Mississippi State. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We post daily videos Monday through Friday, so check those out. Also, we leave a comment, just a question on all these YouTube videos. We love your feedback on that. We love interacting with you. We love talking with you, so definitely do that. And then we also post a separate question in a poll form. So we love your feedback on that. If there's something you want us to talk about, like I mentioned on Monday's show, the off season's coming up. We love any kind of topics that you want us to discuss. So if there's something like that, leave that comment and we'll talk about that as well. And until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.